Over the weekend, new video was released showing the violent attack of Tyre Nichols during a traffic stop in Memphis. Since that release, more conversations are coming up about internalized racism. And here to explain exactly what that is our 9 News mental health expert, Dr. Sheryl Ziegler. Dr. Ziegler, good morning.
Good morning.
Well, so we're talking about two different things. We're talking about individual racism and structural racism. Can you summarize exactly what these two are and how does this happen exactly?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So internalized racism is when people of their own race have racist views. They've taken on whatever the society around them says or thinks about them, all of those negative characteristics, and actually internalize it where they believe it too. And so, of course, I don't know if that's what happened in this situation, but so many people are confused, right? How did this happen? How did we have this violence? And so that's very real in this country. And it's a part of the process of, are you going to assimilate to a culture? Are you going to acculturate? Are you going to be able to hold on to your own beliefs about the goodness of your own culture? And we really have many, many people struggling with this sense of, yeah, they're believing these things. So that's internalized racism. And then there's, of course, structural racism. And that probably has a lot more to do with the police department. So in the police department, the structural racism says, if you see a black male, if they look a certain way, if they're wearing a certain thing, then that is the prototype for, threat or danger. And so that structural racism, particularly in law enforcement we've been looking at, has really been passed down over decades.
And you're right. I mean, in situations like these, they're heartbreaking to watch. Everybody kind of starts to reflect on their own lives a little bit. They want to make sure that this is something they can help prevent in their own communities. How does internalized racism and depression really begin to form? You talked about this kind of being something that is started early.
It is started early. So we worry about kids because if there's any group that's going to be most impacted by this, it's going to be children who are just like sponges. So if they hear negative things, if they think their hair doesn't look a certain way, if they think colorism, so the shade of black or brown of their skin matters, then those things get really embedded into their beliefs. And unless a family, a structure, a school, right, a community are actually talking about it, if they're not celebrating their uniqueness, then this gets ingrained in who they are and they feel shame and sometimes rage even toward their own self.
Yeah. And it's not like it just stays with these kids. They go to school and they repeat what they're told. I'm thinking about, the kids with darker skin like you and me that maybe they're repeating these things to them. They go home with the bad feeling about who they are.
Absolutely. And if you go home to a home environment in which maybe your parents or the people that you live with aren't either willing to talk about it or even, share in some of these beliefs, but they don't want to say that. This isn't something that people sort of readily say out loud. Sometimes it's even unconscious. Then there's nowhere to really process this. And so when you're a child, then you wind up just having these beliefs and you grow up with this shame and, like I said, rage, because sometimes what we see is in adolescence, this can become a rage toward other people who maybe symbolize the things that you hate about your own self.
Yeah. So, you're talking about the fact of we need to talk about this. What else can be done?
So there's a couple of things that we find to be really helpful. First of all is create community. That can be other people who are black. That can be allies. That can be anyone who cares about this topic. Create community and discussion around it. Celebrate your culture. Celebrate where you're from. If you're African American, celebrate your roots, whatever you are, and have people join in. It makes such a difference. Eat the foods that you like. Listen to the foods that are very cultural. That helps. Pay attention to other injustices. Turn your pain into power. And also pay attention to those kids who are most vulnerable. And those are going to be the kids who maybe don't have as much of a space to talk about this, but are surrounded by it.
Yeah, absolutely. Just make sure you're talking about it first and foremost.
Absolutely.
All right, Dr. Ziegler, this is important, so we appreciate you being here.
Thank you.